The rules were laminated. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not scrawled on a napkin, not carved into the doorframe by some madman. Someone had typed them up, printed them, run them through a laminator like a diner menu, and screwed the placard to the inside of the cabin door at eye level. 9 rules. Black text, white background, a little sun and moon graphic at the top that somebody had clearly spent time on. People don't laminate a joke. I found the place a little after 5. I'd been walking since 2, which was 2 hours longer than I'd planned, because the trail I'd come in on had stopped being a trail somewhere around the 3rd creek crossing and turned into a suggestion. I'm not a hiker. I want that clear from the start. I came up to the hollow to scatter no. That's not it either. I came up because my father used to bring me here when I was a kid, to a lake a few miles north of where I ended up. And after the funeral, I got it into my head that I needed to see it again before they logged the whole basin, which they're going to do next spring. I had a map. I had a day pack. I had granola bars and a headlamp, and the kind of confidence that only comes from never having been in real trouble. I lost the lake around noon. I lost the trail around 3. And I found the cabin around 5, sitting in a clearing that didn't show on my map, with its door already open like it had been waiting. I should have kept walking. There was maybe an hour of good light left. But an hour of light is nothing when you don't know which direction to spend it in. And the cabin was dry and solid and had a wood stove. And I told myself I'd sleep, get up at first light, and follow the creek downhill until it hit a road. Water runs downhill. Roads follow water. That was my whole plan. Then I read the placard. Rules for the hollow after sunset, it said across the top. And under that, lots numbered 1 through 9. 1. Bring in enough wood before dark. Do not go out for more once the sun is down. 2. Keep the stove lit until dawn. Not warm, lit. There must be visible flame. 3. Cover the mirror. Do not uncover it for any reason. 4. If you hear knocking, count it. 3 knocks is the wind. Any other number, do not answer and do not speak. 5. Do not say your own name out loud after dark. Do not answer to it if you hear it. 6. The lantern by the bed is not yours. Do not light it. Do not move it. 7. If the stove goes out, do not relight it. Get under the bed and stay there until the birds start. 8. You may hear someone you know outside. You do not know anyone here. 9. If you break a rule, the next one matters twice as much. I read it twice. Then I laughed, the way you laugh at something you don't want to take seriously. And I went to look for the wood pile. Here's what I'll say for whoever wrote those rules. They were a good writer in the sense that they understood people, because Rule 9 is the one that got in under my skin, and I didn't even notice it doing it. If you break a rule, the next one matters twice as much. That's not information. That's a hook. It made the whole list feel like a machine with moving parts, like breaking one thing would set the others spinning. And I stood in that clearing with an armload of split pine and realized I'd already started keeping score. Wood in. Good. That was Rule 1, handled, and I had 30 minutes of light to spare. I want to describe the cabin, because I spent the night learning it inch by inch, and I could draw it now with my eyes shut. 1 room, maybe 12 by 14. The door on the east wall with the placard on it. A single window beside the door, glass intact. No curtain, just a nail where a curtain rod might once have gone. The wood stove squatted in the middle of the room on a square of sheet metal, its pipe going straight up through the roof. And it was a good stove, cast iron, the kind that holds heat for hours. A narrow iron frame bed against the north wall with a mattress that smelled like mice but wasn't wet. Under the bed, when I looked, nothing but dust and a dead moth the size of my thumb. On the wall opposite the bed, a mirror. And the mirror was covered. Somebody had hung a wool blanket over it and tucked the top edge behind the frame so it couldn't slip. The blanket was gray and old and had 2 moth holes in it, up high. And through those holes, I could see slices of the mirror behind, just the silvered glass. Nothing in it but wall. I stood in front of it for a second, looking at those 2 little holes, and then I made myself stop because Rule 3. And because it's a strange thing to stare at a covered mirror waiting for something to look back. The lantern was on the floor at the foot of the bed. An old kerosene one, brass, with a glass chimney furred gray with dust. Rule 6, not mine. I gave it a wide berth on my way past, then felt stupid for doing it, then didn't stop doing it. I got the stove going with the last of the daylight coming flat and orange through the window. I'm handy enough with a fire. My father taught me that much. Kindling in a little cabin shape, 1 match, feed it slow. By the time the sun actually dropped behind the ridge, I had a good flame going, and the stove door cracked, so I could see it, orange and steady, exactly like Rule 2 wanted. Visible flame. I fed it 2 more splits and closed the door part way and sat on the edge of the bed and ate a granola bar. And I thought, this is fine. This is a story. I'll tell this at work. The night I got lost and slept in the Rules cabin. The last of the light went out of the window like someone drawing a hand across it. And then it was dark outside, in the complete way it only gets where there are no towns. And the only light in the world was the seam of orange in the stove. The knocking started maybe an hour later. I'd almost dozed off, sitting up with my back against the cold iron of the bed frame. What woke me was the sound, and I want to be exact about this because I've gone over it so many times. It was not the wind. The wind I'd been hearing all evening, a long high sound in the pipe and a creak in the roof. This was hard. Knuckle on wood, on the door. I counted. I didn't decide to count. My body did it before my brain caught up, the way you flinch before you know why. 1, 2, 3. I let my breath out. 3 knocks is the wind, Rule 4. And I almost laughed again, of course. A branch, a shutter, some loose board the wind was working. Then there was a 4th, 4, and a 5th. I stopped breathing. 6. They weren't fast. That's the thing I can't get across. If it had been frantic, banging, I could have told myself animal, storm, panic. But these were spaced out. Patient. A knock and a wait and a knock, like whoever it was had all night and knew it. I counted to 11 before they stopped. And then the silence afterward was worse than the knocking, because now I was listening into it. And it was listening back. Do not answer and do not speak. I didn't. I sat with my hand over my own mouth like I didn't trust it. And I stared at the door, at the placard I couldn't read in the dark. And I waited for the knocking to start again. It didn't. Instead, after a long time, I heard footsteps go around the side of the cabin. Slow, deliberate, around to the window. I turned my head very slowly. The window was a rectangle of dark blue against the black of the wall, and there was nothing in it. And I let myself think there was nothing in it. And then the something that had been standing so still I'd mistaken it for the dark shifted its weight. And I understood that I had been looking at the back of a head this whole time. A head at the height of a tall man, on the other side of the glass, facing away. I did not make a sound. I have never in my life wanted so badly to make a sound, and not made it. The head began to turn. I got down. I don't remember deciding to. One second I was sitting against the bed frame, and the next I was flat on the floor behind the stove, with the sheet metal cold against my cheek and the fire ticking 6 inches from my face. And I lay there, and I did the only thing I could think to do, which was to keep the stove between me and the window and not look. If I don't look, I told myself, like a child, like an idiot, if I don't look. The footsteps went back around to the door. And then a voice said my name. I'm not going to write my name here. But it said it my whole name, first and last, the way my mother used to when I was in trouble, and the voice was warm and a little tired and so completely, exactly familiar that my chest cracked open, and for one horrible second I almost answered. Because the voice was my father's. And my father was 3 weeks in the ground. And every stupid grieving cell in my body lunged toward that sound like a dog at a door. Rule 5. Do not answer to it if you hear it. Rule 8. You do not know anyone here. I bit down on the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. I did not answer. I lay there behind the stove and let my father's voice say my name 3 more times. Each one a little less like him. Each one a little more like something that had learned him. And I understood, lying on that filthy floor with iron ticking beside my ear, that the rules were not a joke and had never been a joke. And that whoever wrote them had lain exactly where I was lying. And had lived, because I was reading their words. That thought kept me alive for the next hour. I clung to it. Somebody wrote these. Somebody survived to write these. The voice stopped eventually. The footsteps didn't come back. I made myself count the rules in my head to stay calm. And that's when the accounting caught up with me, and I felt the floor tilt. I'd broken one. Not the knocking. I hadn't answered the knocking. Not the name. I hadn't answered the name. I lay there running through it, and then I remembered getting down. When the head turned, I dropped behind the stove and lain flat with my face on the metal. And in doing that, I'd stopped feeding the fire. I'd left it. And Rule 2 didn't say keep warm. It said keep it lit. Visible flame. Not embers, flame. I turned my head and looked at the stove door, at the gap I'd left cracked. And inside, there was no flame. There was a deep sullen orange, a bed of coals breathing dull and low, and no flame at all. The fire had gone out while the thing was at the window. And Rule 7, I heard my own pulse in my ears reading it. If the stove goes out, do not relight it. Get under the bed and stay there until the birds start. But Rule 2 said keep it lit. And Rule 9, the hook, the one that had gotten in under my skin in the clearing, while I still thought this was a story. If you break a rule, the next one matters twice as much. I had let the fire go to coals. That was Rule 2, broken, which meant the next rule, Rule 3, the mirror mattered twice as much now. And I understood, lying there with my heart going like a fist on a door, that the rules were not 9 separate warnings. They were a sequence, a ladder, and I had just missed a rung. I didn't relight it. I want that on the record. Whatever else I did wrong, I obeyed Rule 7. I did not relight it. I got up in a crouch and I went for the bed, to get under it like the rule said. And to do that, I had to cross the room. And to cross the room, I had to pass the mirror. And the blanket over the mirror was moving. Not much, just the bottom edge, lifting and settling, the way a curtain moves over a heat vent. Except there was no heat now. The stove was dying. There was no draft that should have touched it. The 2 moth holes up high were black, not showing wall behind them anymore. Just black. and the whole gray weight of that blanket was breathing. Slow, in and out, in time with the knocks I'd counted, in time with something on the other side of the glass that wanted very badly for me to lift it and see. Rule 3 mattered twice as much now. I knew that. I made myself say the numbers. Rule 2 broken, so Rule 3 is doubled. So whatever the mirror is, it is twice what it was an hour ago. And an hour ago, it was covered for a reason so good that a stranger laminated it to a door. I got on my knees. The bed was 4 feet away. The mirror was to my right, close enough to touch, the blanket lifting and settling. And I kept my eyes down on the floorboards, and I crawled. And the whole time, the bottom edge of that blanket was rising higher with each breath. And I could feel the cold coming off the glass now. A real cold, a wet cold, like standing at the mouth of a cave. I reached the bed. I got my head and shoulders under it into the dust and the dead moth and the dark. And I pulled my legs in after me. And I lay there, facing out into the room with my cheek on the floor. And I watched the base of the mirror across the boards. The blanket was up past the frame now, held there. Not slipping, held by nothing, at an angle no draft makes. And in the sliver of silvered glass, I could see below its raised edge, there was no reflection of the room. No stove, no bed, no me. Just a long gray corridor going back and back into the mirror. And at the far end of that corridor, coming closer, unhurried, taking its patient, endless time, something that walked. And behind me, from under the bed, from the dark I'd crawled into for safety, so close it stirred the hair on my neck. A voice I did not recognize as my father's, and did not recognize as mine, and did not recognize as anything that should be able to speak, said very softly, "You're on Rule 4. I lay perfectly still. I had counted them wrong. I had thought I was further along. I ran the ladder again in my head, the knocking. 4 and more. That was Rule 4. I'd obeyed it, hadn't I? I hadn't answered. And the voice under the bed with me, closer now, patient as knuckles on a door, said it again, kind, almost gentle, correcting a child who'd added the numbers wrong. "You're on Rule 4, and you just spoke?" I hadn't. I was sure I hadn't. My hand was over my mouth. My hand had been over my mouth the whole time. But my hand was over my mouth. So whose hand was on my shoulder? I did the only thing a body does when a hand it can't explain lands on its shoulder. I came out from under the bed, not gracefully. I clawed forward on my elbows into the open room and got my knees under me and spun around. And there was nothing under the bed. Dust. The dead moth. The dark I'd crawled into. No hand. No crouched shape. No mouth close to my ear. Nothing at all. But I'd felt it. The weight of it was still printed on my shoulder like a wet cloth. The mirror behind me had gone quiet. When I made myself look, and I had to, I couldn't not. With the corridor and the walking thing still burning in my head, the blanket had fallen back into place. Draped flat, both moth holes showing plain gray wall behind, as if it had never lifted, as if I'd dreamed the whole slow breath of it. I did not trust that for 1 second. A thing that pretends to be still is worse than a thing that moves. I'd learned that at the window. The stove was almost out. That was the fact that mattered. The one solid, true thing in a room that had stopped being trustworthy. When I opened the door, the coals were graying at the edges, going from orange to the color of old ash. And Rule 7 was absolute in my head. Do not relight it. Get under the bed until the birds. But I'd just come out from under the bed. Something had spoken to me under there. And the birds were hours away. It wasn't even close to midnight. I'd have bet my life on it. Except I had no watch, and my phone had died on the trail, and the dark outside the window had no bottom to it. I want to lay out where I stood, because I stood there a long time, and I need you to understand I wasn't panicking. I'd gone past panic into a cold, flat place where you just count. Rule 2, broken. I'd let the fire go to coals. That doubled Rule 3, the mirror, and the mirror had answered by opening a corridor and breathing at me, and I'd survived that only by not looking long and getting under the bed. So call Rule 3 survived, barely. But Rule 7 said the bed was safety when the stove died, and the bed was where the voice had been. The rules were eating each other. Follow 7 and go under the bed toward the voice. Follow 2 and relight the fire, which 7 forbade. Every door out of the room had a rule nailed across it, and the rules no longer agreed. That's when I understood the thing that saved my life. And I understood it the way you understand you've stepped off a curb all at once. In the gut, before the mind. The rules weren't for surviving the hollow. The rules were for feeding it. Think about it. Bring in wood so you never have to open the door after dark, so you're sealed in with it. Keep the flame so it can always see you. Always find the warm shape in the room. Don't answer the knocking. Don't say your name. Don't answer the voice so you sit still and quiet, and don't run while it circles and learns you. Get under the bed when the fire dies. Go to ground. Hold still. Wait. Every rule pointed the same direction. Stay. Be quiet. Be predictable. Don't leave the cabin. Whoever laminated that placard hadn't survived to write it. They'd been made to write it. It was bait in the shape of instructions, screwed to the inside of a door that a lost person would read the way I'd read it gratefully, like a lifeline, and obey right up until the thing had finished walking down its long gray corridor to the mouth of the glass. Rule 1, do not go out once the sun is down. That was the real rule. That was the whole point of the other 8, and it was the one I was going to break. I moved before I could argue myself out of it. I grabbed my day pack off the floor by the bed. I did not go near the mirror. I got the stove door open all the way, and I did the one thing Rule 2 and Rule 7 both screamed against. I fed it, not to keep it lit for the thing to see me by, to make it big. I jammed in every split I had left, the whole armload from Rule 1, and I cracked the door wide so the air roared in. And the coals caught the fresh pine and went up with a sound like a held breath let go. And in 10 seconds, I had a fire that was too big for the stove. Flames licking out the open door, heat shoving me back on my heels. The room lit up orange, and I saw everything at once. The window empty, the door shut. The mirror and the blanket over the mirror was standing straight out from the wall now, rigid, pointing at me like a hand. And behind it, in the widening gap, the corridor was there again. And the walking thing was close, close, no longer at the far end. Close enough that I could see it was tall and gray and had my father's coat on, the barn coat, the one we buried him in. And it lifted the sleeve toward the glass from the inside. I threw the burning split. I'd pulled one flaming length of pine out of the stove with my bare hand. I've still got the scar. A white stripe across 3 fingers. It's the only proof I have that any of this was real. And I threw it overhand at the mirror as hard as a terrified man can throw. And it hit the glass dead center. The mirror did not crack. It swallowed it. The burning split went into the surface like a stone, into water, ripples and all. And for one instant the whole corridor lit orange from the inside, and I saw the thing wearing my father flinch back from the fire, actually flinch, throw the borrowed sleeve up across the borrowed face. And I understood the last thing I'd learned that night. It didn't like the flame either. The flame in the stove had never been for me to be seen by. It had been to keep the thing on its side of the glass. Rule 2 hadn't been bait. Rule 2 had been the one honest rule on the whole placard, and I'd let it burn down to coals an hour ago. And that was when the mirror started breathing. I didn't stay to watch it recover. I hit the door with my shoulder, threw the bar up, and went out into the dark of Rule 1. Here's what I want to say about being outside. It was better. I know how that sounds. But the second I was through the door and into the cold and the trees, the pressure that had been building in that room all night, the sense of a lid coming down, of being sorted and studied and waited for, it broke. Whatever the thing was, it lived in the cabin the way a spider lives in a web. The web was the room. The rules were the strands, the window, the mirror, the space under the bed, the lantern. I'd never touched all of it, was one apparatus, and I'd walked out the side of it. Behind me, the cabin was going up. The fire I'd overfed had found the split I couldn't throw far enough, or the dry old wood of the floor, or maybe it didn't need a reason. Orange light was jumping in the window, and there was a sound coming out of the place that I will not try to describe, except to say it was not a fire sound, and it was not a wind sound, and it went up and up past where a voice should stop, and I did not turn around to see what was making it. I ran downhill. Water runs downhill. Roads follow water. It was the only plan I'd ever had, and it was still the only plan I had. And I clung to it the way I'd clung to somebody survived to write these, except now I knew nobody had. And the not knowing where I was going was, for the first time all night, a mercy, because if I didn't know, then neither did it. I fell a lot. I lost the pack somewhere. I found a creek by stepping in it, cold to the shin, and I followed it down with my hand out ahead of me in the dark. And twice I heard something on the slope above me, keeping pace, unhurried, patient as knuckles. And both times I stopped moving entirely and made no sound and did not say my name and did not answer. Because those rules, at least, were real. And I understood now what they were really for. Not to keep me in the web, to keep me from being noticed once I'd left it. The birds started while I was still in the water. That's Rule 7, the tail end of it, until the birds start. First one, high up and thin, and then another, and then the gray came into the sky between the trees so gradually I didn't notice it arriving. Only that at some point I could see the creek I'd been feeling my way down, and my own hands, blue with cold, one of them striped white across 3 fingers where the burning wood had been. The road was a logging spur, gravel, half washed out, and I've never in my life been so happy to see anything ugly. I followed it 4 hours to a gate, and the gate to a county 2-lane, and the 2-lane to a man in a pickup who took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. Just put the heater on and drove me to town. They didn't find the cabin. I want to be careful here because this is the part where I could tell you something clean, and I'm not going to. A sheriff's deputy took me out 3 days later, after I'd slept and eaten and stopped shaking enough to point at a map. I found the logging spur. I found the creek. I found the 3rd crossing where my trail had turned into a suggestion. I could not find the clearing. We spent 6 hours, and there was no clearing and no cabin and no burned place where a cabin had been. And the deputy was kind about it, kinder than I'd have been, and wrote it up as exposure and disorientation. A lost man who'd sheltered somewhere and gotten turned around, and I let him, because what was the alternative? But I know it burned. I know the corridor lit orange and the thing in my father's coat flinched from the fire. I know I walked out of a web that closes on people who read the rules and stay. I don't think it died. Webs get rebuilt. I think somewhere in that basin, the basin they're logging next spring. The basin they'll send crews into with chainsaws and no laminated placards, and no idea there's a clearing that doesn't show on any map, and a door that stands open like it's been waiting. And 9 rules screwed to the inside of it at eye level. Black text on white with a little sun and moon graphics somebody spent real time on. If you find it, here's the only rule that matters. And it's not on the list. Don't read the rest. Go back out the door you came in while the sun's still up, and run downhill. And don't stop when you hear someone you love calling you back. You don't know anyone there. That one's true. That one I'll swear to. It's the only thing I brought out of the hollow that I'd hand to another person. And I'm handing it to you now. The rules are the trap. The way out was never on the placard. The way out was the door. I take the long way around mirrors now. I keep a fire lit at night, even in summer. And my wife has stopped asking why. And sometimes, late, when the house is quiet and the flame is low, I hear 3 knocks somewhere in the walls, and I hold my breath and count. And every time so far, it's stopped at 3. 3 knocks is the wind. I have to believe that. I've built the rest of my life on believing that. But I lie awake now, on the nights it happens, and I wait for the 4th.